Right now, your organization is running on cryptography nobody has completely mapped. It's buried in systems you bought, your team built a decade ago, and products you'll never see inside. And all of it rests on the same kind of math that quantum computing is about to break. That's a transition everyone's talking about, and almost no one has explained to you at the altitude you actually make decisions from. Because every version you're handed is built to sell you something or pitch 2 levels too deep. So here's the clear version, the one you'll wish someone had handed to you the first time this landed on your desk. In the next few minutes, you'll know exactly what breaks and what survives, why this is a multi-year program instead of a patch you can buy, and the 2 distinctions that make you the most prepared person in your next board meeting. I'm Addie Lamar, founder of Lamar Labs, with 15 years in cybersecurity and all of it inside cryptography. This channel puts you in command of the quantum transition, so you lead it while the rest of your industry is still guessing. Let's start with the statement that causes most of the confusion. Quantum breaks encryption. It's accurate, but it's also dangerously incomplete. And the incomplete version is what makes this feel like a vague apocalypse instead of a clearly defined problem. Contrary to popular belief, quantum computers don't break all encryption, but they do break one specific kind, public key cryptography. That's RSA, elliptic curve, and Diffie-Hellman, which are the algorithms your systems use to exchange keys and prove identity. The other half of cryptography, which is the symmetric encryption that actually scrambles your data at rest, including things like AES, survives. It just gets a little bit weaker, and you handle that by moving to a bigger key, and that's the whole fix for that half. So here's the first thing that makes you smarter than everyone else in the room. When someone tells you quantum is going to break all your encryption, they've just told you they don't really understand the problem. The threat is extremely specific, and it has a name. And a specific named problem is one you can actually manage. So if it's only that one category, why does it matter so much? Every secure thing your systems do starts with an invisible handshake you never see. 2 machines that have never met agree on a shared secret. A server proves it's really your bank and not an impersonator. A device confirms its own firmware is genuine. All of that is public key cryptography at work, running underneath TLS, VPNs, code signing, and PKI, billions of times a day. That's the layer quantum actually threatens, and it's why this matters so much more than swapping one algorithm. Picture your environment as a whole building. Symmetric encryption is the locked door on each room, and public key is the foundation and the plumbing every room actually depends on. If you break a door, you lose that one room. But if you break the foundation, then you lose the thing that lets anything trust anything else. So if the fix is just new algorithms, and those already exist, why does this take years instead of a single afternoon? The strangest part of this whole problem is that the hard part is already done. In 2024, NIST published the post-quantum standards, so the replacement algorithms already exist today. If your entire world were a single application, you would swap the algorithm in a single day. It takes years because that old cryptography is poured into everything you own, and most of it is invisible to you right now. It's embedded in systems you bought, built a decade ago, or vendor products you can't see inside. Before you can replace any of it, you have to find all of it, and almost no organization has an accurate map or idea of where its own cryptography lives. That discovery is a real project on its own, and I've got a whole video coming on why your inventory lies to you. Then you replace it without breaking what depends on it, and you build it so you can do it again, which is a capability called cryptographic agility. You're rebuilding the foundation of a building while everyone keeps working inside it. But a quantum computer can't do any of this yet. So why start now instead of when the threat is actually real? Somewhere right now, an adversary is copying encrypted traffic they can't read yet and filing it away. They don't need a quantum computer today, but they do need one eventually, and they're betting they'll get it before your secrets stop needing to stay secret. It's called Harvest Now, Decrypt Later, and it's already happening. And I'll take it apart in its own video as well. But here's a broad overview. So the real question was never, when does the quantum computer turn on? Instead, you need to consider, how long does my data need to stay secret? Anything with a 5 or 10-year shelf life already has its clock running, and you can't unexpose it later. For that data, waiting until the threat feels real means waiting years too long. And the second distinction that puts you ahead: if 2035 is the only date in your plan, it's the wrong one to anchor to. That number was set in 2022 as a conservative federal target. And the executive order signed in June 2026 already set harder deadlines for federal systems, with key establishment by 2030 and signatures by 2031. Federal timelines like these have a way of becoming the benchmark your regulators, auditors, insurers, and biggest customers expect from you too. And your own application-specific standards can pull the date earlier still. So if the fix exists, the clock already started, and the work is a multi-year program, what does that make your job? Every other piece of this has someone you can hand it to. The engineers implement, the vendors deliver, and the consultants advise. Ownership is the one part that stays on your desk no matter what. You own all of it, knowing where your cryptography lives, deciding what gets migrated first based on what's actually at risk, the roadmap, the vendor questions, and the story you tell your board when they ask, because they will ask, whether or not you have an answer ready. Done well, it's the difference between walking into an audit with a documented, defensible plan and walking in saying, "We're aware." So before you take any of this to your board, there are 4 traps that quietly sink most of these efforts. So what are they? Each of these 4 sounds completely reasonable said out loud in a meeting, which is exactly what makes them dangerous. The first is, it's decades away. The hardware timeline is the wrong clock to focus on. Harvest now, decrypt later means your real deadline is your data's shelf life, and that countdown is already ticking. The second is that it's an IT problem. We'll patch it when it's real. Wrong. It's a governance and architecture problem first and an engineering one second. And by the time it's undeniable, you've lost the years the migration takes. The third is compliance will cover us. However, the mandates were calibrated against older estimates, and they're already moving exponentially, and passing an audit against yesterday's threat model isn't the same as being safe. And the fourth is, our vendors will handle it. Plenty of products marketed as quantum ready haven't actually turned it on, and you can verify that yourself, which I will also walk through in its own video. You can outsource the implementation, but you really can't outsource owning the inventory, risk decisions, or your board's confidence. So that's what the quantum transition actually is. It's a defined, manageable migration of the one layer everything else trusts. And the people who get ahead of it are simply the ones who understood it early. Before you go, here's the one line to take to your board. We have a multi-year cryptographic migration ahead of us. The clock on our long-lived data already started, and we need a plan before the auditors ask for one. So that's the whole map: what breaks, what survives, and why it's a multi-year program, and why the clock on your long-lived data is already running. That understanding puts you ahead of the vast majority of people making these decisions right now. When you decide to turn it into a plan your board will fund, you bring in Lamar Labs. The link's below. Next, we take apart the Q day everyone's bracing for, because the announcement you're waiting for is never going to arrive. I'll see you in that video next.